There's been a litany of articles written, the GOP establishment war. Why are you the best candidate both for the Republican Party but the broader electorate?
Well, because I have a degree in foreign policy. I'm a United States Army veteran. I joined the Army Intelligence and served in the Cold War in Europe. I chaired the National Commission on Homeland Security and Terrorism for the United States of America at the request of the Congress for 5 years. I was the governor during the 9/11 attack. And that was when I had to actually suddenly become a war governor because Virginia was attacked at the Pentagon. And I know what needs to be done. We need to recognize the nation-to-state attacks that we're under, or challenges that we're having. We need to understand the radical Islamist attacks and to recognize that we're not going to solve these problems by scapegoating people, by talking about Hispanics or Muslims or women or Asians or African Americans and alienating all of those people. That's not the way that we're going to actually get to a solution that is best interest of America.
Don't you think if the definition of insanity is trying the same thing over and over again? We went into Iraq. I'm not going to get into weapons of mass destruction, but many would say that that was the source of creating ISIS. We went in there, we tried to establish democracy for other countries, and now it's even more unstable. Why is it that America needs to be the leader to solve other countries' problems? $1 trillion debts for us, lives.
Well, there's a lot of things to answer in that. First of all, I'm not a neocon. I don't believe that in today's world that the United States can simply go in and conquer countries and change their whole governments around. I think that we have to learn from experience, not only the Vietnam experience, but the Iraq experience, which means we have to be more sophisticated. But I'm not an isolationist. I don't believe that America can afford to pull back and send this message of weakness that we've been seeing. I think we have to be strong enough and sophisticated enough to shape events to the advantage of the American people. That means we have to find a middle ground to be able to do that in foreign policy.
What's in your mind behind the weakness? You said we've been sending a message of weakness.
Well, I think President Obama decided that he wanted to have a reaction against the policy, the neocon policy of President George W. Bush. And I don't think we need to return to Bush foreign policy. But I do believe that he has then overreacted and sent a message of weakness that is extremely dangerous.
How so?
Well, the Russians are now in Syria. And, we had Governor Christie say, well, we'll just do a no-fly zone, and if we need to, we'll just shoot down the Russian airplanes. Well, that's not sophisticated thinking. As a person who worked in the Cold War, I know that that's not possible. But it's the president's policy that's now made that much more complicated. So we have a lot of work to do, but the best thing to do is to strengthen the United States, to rebuild the Army, to actually add ships for our Navy so that we have presence around the world, so that we can make sure the sea lanes are open in the South China Sea, so that we can do what's necessary to have the proper vessels into the Middle East, so we can protect not only our troops, but protect our interests in those places.
In terms of Syria, what would a President Gilmore have done differently? Are you talking about ground troops? Are you talking about, what is the alternative to what President Obama is doing?
This is my approach. I'm not talking about putting in regular ground troops at this point into Syria. I think that would potentially get us bogged down the way that we saw in Iraq. But we can't just leave it alone and walk away from it and say these are not our problems. The ISIS group is a small conclave of people who are particularly savage and committing crimes against humanity. We can't allow that to actually gain strength and then begin to capture the minds of young people across the world. We can't allow that to happen. So we have to be prepared with our special forces to squeeze these people in. We have to be prepared with our intelligence community to make sure that we know where the enemy is with proper oversight so they're not violating our rights, but we have to strengthen the intelligence community. And then finally, the most important thing, and that is that we have to win the war of ideas. Right now, the radical Islamists are taking the position that they are right and that what they're doing is justified and that they're somehow playing defense against the Americans. The fact of the matter is that the United States has a right to defend ourselves, and we have the right to assert our human values: advancement of women, rule of law, free enterprise. These are the kinds of things that are democracy. These are the things that will prevail in the 21st century. Radical Islamism will pass away, and I think it'll pass away with us making alliances with other Muslims across the world that think that the radicals are wrong. Now, I am in a position, based upon my experience and my comments in this campaign, to draw people together. I haven't tried to scapegoat people. And I'm not going to have a Republican Party that scapegoats people and tries to find people who you can blame for the ills and the challenges facing America. That's not a constructive approach.
You mentioned the war of ideas, which I agree with. Do you think that war of ideas is going to be able to be even initiated when you have candidates saying we're not going to let Muslims into the country? To me, you really put at risk a 15-year-old in Pakistan when he hears those messages, kind of pouring gasoline and creating more terrorists. How do you diffuse what's really become in your party a certain section that is spewing hate?
We agree. As a matter of fact, I was the first national figure in the United States to go to Florida in the Sunshine Summit and to say that this effort to scapegoat people based upon race and ethnicity and gender and religion, these things are wrong. And I said they were wrong. And in fact, my direct quote was that that's fascist talk and not worthy of the great Republican Party of the United States of America. And when I become the president, I'm going to follow the kind of background that I've done in the past. When I was the Attorney General and African American churches were being burned, I led a bipartisan effort to stop it, and it stopped. When I was the governor of Virginia, my theme was a time for all Virginians, and I drew people together, brought Coretta Scott King into Richmond, separated out the Robert E. Lee holiday from the Martin Luther King holiday, and really tried to draw the communities together so that we could actually face these kinds of challenges. And I'm repelled by the idea that we're going to become a narrow, small Republican Party that only deals with angry white men. There are other things that we can do and other people that we can make common ground with, but not if we're trying to scapegoat people and condemn all people based on their religion or their race or their ethnicity.